Hi, everybody. I've got a box of goodies to share with you today to show you. This is one of those look what I found things. I'll tell you a little bit about it. All it was is that my husband and I went on our periodic trip to a little tiny town called Shelton, which is like a lumber mill town on the left side of the Puget Sound. Really beautiful around there. Um, there are a few antique stores and stuff, and there's this one place called the Nifty Thrifty Thrift Store that benefits the senior center. And most of the time, yeah, we'll find, a couple, you know, well, I'll tell you what we found yesterday. They had a free box of vinyl LP records. We found a bunch of those. Um, what was the coolest one we found? I don't know. We found a bunch of records. Um, including Young Americans by David Bowie, among other things, and a couple K-Tel compilations. And we also found VHS copies of the Lavender Hill Mob and I think the Deliverance movie, one of those Clint Eastwood movies. And I found beads. So this is about the beads. What I'll do is I will share my screen and I will unveil the box that I found. This box was sitting under a few, collectible purses, like a Coach purse that was a Coach kind of clutch purse that was made in the USA, and um, a beaded one that was pretty nice. But I've got beaded purses, but I didn't have this. This says jet cap plus jet pieces, and it looks like they may have tried to give it to a museum. And yes, it cost me $10. I don't know what Doyle's is, but it's obviously a business that's long gone. And yes, jet. Oh boy. Um, I will have to move this out of the way to unveil these singly, and I have to handle them pretty gently, and I should probably be using the little white gloves, but too bad. These have not been properly handled ever, probably. And I think this is the jet cap that they were talking about. Now, jet can mean glass that is imitation jet, or it can mean real jet. And there's another piece in here that I think is possibly real jet. I think this is all glass, but I want you to look at I'm going to get a close up on this sucker because these beads, come on, focus sesame. These beads have an unusual cut to them. Let's see. Here we go. Um, they are, I'm thinking they're glass. I'll have to get my glasses out. Speaking of glass, I just looked at this yesterday, and I know the little ones pretty much have to be glass. And now that I look at these with glasses on, even though the cut is irregular, I think they might be pressed glass, although there's no equator. There's often a little lumpy area in the middle of cut glass that is the equator, is the part where the two pressing sides met each other, and that often leads to splooge, glass splooge. That's usually cleaned off. But look at this. Look at this guy right here. There is just a little bit of a scratch on it, and it makes me wonder whether, hmm, I don't know, whether it was actual jet that was cut, Whitby jet. I'll put a link to an article on Whitby jet in the disc and after I post the video. And yes, this is coming apart, as you can see. These are wires, not threads, which makes it somewhat unusual. So again, let's see, I have a ruler with me. It's, let's measure this puppy, about 10 inches wide. And because it's wire, it can be formed, or, it can sit on somebody and as a headpiece. I don't know. I mean, when you say cap, I figure you're talking about a cap that goes on your head. I'm not going to mess with this too much more because, again, it's so delicate. A bead already came off. Let's see if I can restring it. Okay. Okay, it's back on there. But wire, especially 100-year-old wire, breaks, especially when it's thin, especially any wire, any metal back and forth, moved back and forth a bunch of times will break. It's called metal fatigue. So I'm not going to mess with this as little as possible. There's a break here, there's a break here, but it looks like the rest of it is intact. So I'm going to carefully put it back into the lid of the box and bring out the next goodie that is in there. But that really intrigues me because that cut of bead, I'll show it to you again, is unusual. It is not all that. Oh no, I can tell you right now, is was not properly finished. So come on, baby. Let's see. And that has the equator, the little splooge, like middle splooge. So, and it's the same style. So I think basically due to the fact that there was one, oh, here's another one. One couple beads in here that were done, finished a little more sloppily than the rest. That betrays it as glass. Um, when you have Whitby jet and you have people cutting into the jet, it's not going to produce that little equator splooge of glass on a flat surface. So again, I'm not one of these I'm not a scholar about it, but I'm thinking from the evidence of my evidence-based practice that it's glass and not jet. This is neither jet nor glass. It is a very fun and interesting piece of cloth. And I want to show you that the tassels come down diagonally. I'd like to find a way to show you that better, but maybe what I'll do, show you that way. So that, I don't know if it was handmade or machine made, but whatever it was pretty intricate. This is the basically what goes along with Victorian era clothing. So the excessive ornament was the order of the day. What can I say? And this is just a really cool piece of cloth trim that I don't think it looks like it would have gone on a lampshade, for example. It came just like this in a box, detached from whatever it had been attached to. And it's just a fabulous example of what kind of imagination these Victorians had in terms of like any color you want, as long as it's black, and will it fit? Can you put it on clothing? Let's see if I can get you a better detail shot. See how for each tassel, they had to have those strands come together at the top, loop over, and then they were basically tied together with um, with more of the same cord. So each one of those is done separately. And each the netting above was, this is all, there's no bead, there aren't any beads there. This is all cord, was just done exquisitely. And again, I'm not knowledgeable enough about um, fabric to say what for sure whether it was hand done or not. But what can I say? It's pretty. So, and I found it, and I'm still amazed, in the amazed phase over it right now. On to the next guy. Speaking of fabric, now this is where fabric, specifically lace, intersects with the world of beads and sequins. I'll give you more of a bird's eye view of this. That's about as high as my little camera will go. And this had very long lace, well, not super long, but clearly functional lace functional lace attached to it. Again, no context. I don't know if it was on a shawl or a jacket or what, but it's seed beads, and these are known as three cuts. I'll give you a closer view of it in a second here. And put on netting. And people do this now. If you see a beaded a dress, this continued in the 1920s. People would have chiffon cloth done up with beads this way for the whole dress. And if you can find one of those, it's usually in terrible shape because the chiffon silk rots. And if it's silk chiffon, the beads outweigh the silk. But people still make silk dresses that are fully beaded. And it takes a lot of work, and it's, in my opinion, it's worth all the work that it takes, because they end up looking fabulous. But this is in particular something that is done on a very fine netting, and it's done in a particular way known as tambour stitch, or it's a particular way to adhere beads and sequins, in this case, to thread. And the original thread that is here would have been black, but it has simply faded. Come on, baby. Gotta get it in focus here. And the beads themselves are glass, and the sequins are probably celluloid, I'm thinking. I don't know. Again, I'm having to guess, because the only information I have about this find is what was written on the top of the box. It just said museum, it said jet pieces, it said jet cap, and again, jet can mean black glass, or it can mean real Whitby jet. This is clearly black. I seriously doubt whether it's Whitby jet. I believe that it's jet black glass. And again, because of the amount of time it takes to make these beads, much less sew them on there, it's from an HNT&P, whole nother time and place. That's what I call it, HNT&P. So there's more to come. I'm going to carefully put this. Again, this is partially coming apart. You can see that they did a very exquisite job on it, but it's probably over 100 years old. Over 100 years from now, or behind, 100 years before this is 1924. It might go back 120 years. 1904 or 130 years to 1894, for all I know. Jet and black glass was very popular up until, well, it's always been popular. I mean, everything goes with black, right? Black is fabulous. Black is beautiful in every sense of the word. Now, on to the next gorgeous black artifact. Oh boy, what should I choose first? This is, let's see. Oh boy, hard to pick a favorite. This is a piece of what they call passementerie, and it's a French term meaning trims with really cool things on them, such as beads. This again is a combination of, got to get this sucker to focus better. It's these right here are rocailles or round seed beads. They're shaped like bagels or donuts. These right here, you can see the uh, more blockiness of them are two-cut seed beads. The piece, the two pieces, that last two pieces I showed you had three cuts. I'll go into that, what that means in a minute. Two cuts mean that there was a cane to make the beads, a long, thin slip of glass that was formed in a mold, I believe, that had six sides. So it's going to be a hexagon, but it's going to be the hexagon shape goes the long way. The beads are cut up the short way, and they end up looking like that. And it's those flat sides, those multiple flat sides, that gives it uh, that facet sparkle. Obviously, this came apart. Therefore, I'm going to handle it very carefully. Again, this is made of cotton. This is cotton and silk. Cotton rots, silk rot. Cotton gets frayed, silk gets frayed and rots. This is probably made before polyester and rayon and all that stuff was invented. So thank you, Queen Victoria, for bringing the whole black thing into vogue, right? I I noticed that the difference with this, they still make passementerie. I mean, passementerie is still in production, and you can buy it. The details of this, the way it's made, the intricacy, the combinations of more than one type of seed bead in it. In other words, the two cuts, also known as hex cuts, and just the round seed beads is unusual, and it shows an attention to detail that is lacking, or as production demands and the cost of manufacturing uh, had an influence over our modern production. Those kinds of devotion to unusual details has waned a little bit. I'm not knocking the good work that the modern producers do, because believe me, it's still a lot of work. But to find something like this just shows that the the willingness to expend labor to this extent uh, uh, was still a thing, and it's admirable. On to the next one. This is going to be, now this is a mystery to me, because, and I know that they used metal beads back in the day. I'm kind of trying to cover up my overhead light. I need the overhead light on, but I don't want it shining on this reflecting surface. Now, this is something that could have been put even on a shoe, but more likely, again, on a piece of clothing. The little metal seed beads are 90 are it's I'm 99% sure that those little metal seed beads were produced before World War I, because once World War I started, they had to use metal for uncool things like bombs and war machinery and bullets and stuff. So they stopped production of these steel beads. They call them steel cut beads. These are actually, if you look at them really closely, they are more irregular than cut. They, if I look at them really closely, I hate to do this to you, but I got to get it out of focus here to look at it close enough. And I'd have to get a loop on it, a jeweler's loop, to look at it close enough. But my impression is that these are merely round and irregular instead of actual molded or cut beads, but they're still really cool. They're still really unique. You can occasionally find them. I have, I do have some steel cut beads like these that weren't made up into anything yet, but they're very hard to find. The bugle beads, these are bugle beads, the long skinny ones. They seem to have, they seem to be molded. It's hard to say. And my only source of doubt is whether these are more modern, but I suspect that this is this is an older piece. I'm so used to seeing this shape, this kind of rice shaped bead in some of the more modern metallized plastic, even like 1970s era um, necklace type of materials and such, or craft materials. But I'm thinking it would be very unusual for somebody to put these modern beads and go to the trouble of making this, because this is actually woven together. See, they had to pick up one of these little tiny beads at a time, weave it together with the next, or we'll pick up a few at a time, count to make sure they have the right number of beads on there, and do this whole pattern. And this pattern is not a beginner pattern. So I'm thinking, yeah, it probably is. They started using more metal in the 20s, I'm thinking. So it might be a little bit later. But again, this is like great grandma's stash, basically, is what this whole pile looks like to me. In timber country, which is where Shelton is, where what, that where I found this, there were not a lot of wealthy people, but when they had those who those who had wealth and spent it on things like this, passed it down to from generation to generation, and then it finally apparently went to a family member who just said, "Oh my God, we have too much stuff. I don't know what to do with great grandma's stuff. Maybe the museum will take it or whatever." Maybe they didn't. Maybe it stayed in somebody's house, and then somebody found it and thought, "Oh, let's just give it to the thrift store." Thank you. Thank you for doing that. It didn't go into nowhere. I'll put it that way. Um, again, this is, I'm thinking it's probably from over 100 years old again, maybe from the 19 teens, let's say. And one thing to consider when you are evaluating without tearing things apart or destroying or partially destroying them, what material something is made out of, well, consider the weight. These are, if they're not, these are, for the weight of it, it feels like it's metal. It's actually solid metal. They're hollow because they're beads, but the weight indicates that they're not metallized plastic. And I'm not going to destroy it or take it apart to find out whether these individually are metallized plastic. But overall, I'm thinking in the context, it's probably actual metal. That was the only non-jet black thing. Now, I've got three more items. No, excuse me, four more items. This is another piece of passementerie, This is something you will find often on get this lamp down on there. I'm gonna try to get a better, shed some more light on it. Oh, here we go. Now we got some, I can see through it a little bit better. Let's see here. I'll get that out of the view. This is again all done in glass beads and cloth fabric. Excuse me, not fabric exactly, but uh, thread. There are two things hanging off of here. And again, I think they are pressed glass that's just really well done. I'm not 100% sure. Again, I've only had this for a day, so haven't done a huge amount of research. But honestly, let's see, it's possible that everything on here is glass except for this little dagger thing might be these two little dagger shaped beads. I know it's hard to see, pardon me. That guy and that guy might possibly be jet. Again, I'm gonna hedge my bets and not assume, but the precision cut of these is such that it's either extremely well done glass or it's hand cut jet. And honestly, the relative irregularity of these, and again, here I go, it just came apart right on camera. Was dangling from a little piece of rotted rotted out cotton. Um, it it might actually be jet because it would be, let's see, brutally identical uh, if it was pressed glass, because when people make pressed glass beads, they have a mold, and that mold is just, they feed a rod of partially molten glass into that mold as it's clamping down, and every piece is identical. These are not. The cuts, it's the shape of it and the style of it are identical, but let's see if I can angle them correctly. That guy and that guy are they're not identical. So that says to me that these are not pressed glass, and that makes it theoretically possible, at least, that these, just the two beads on here are jet beads. On to the next one, and this is another one I thought, oh, maybe it's jet. The nice thing is that the rest of the beads, I'll show you a few of them, were all in the the uh, the box with them. So here's the the thread that broke. I'll show you how easy it is. Oh, yeah, it's pretty. This is 100-year-old cotton thread. It's pretty easy to break. So I'm going to be pretty gentle with these. Here's a broken bead. That's interesting. They used a broken bead, even though, and you can tell, maybe that's all they had to work with. Even though it's broken, now I can tell you, they still strung it be, because it had this bead broken. The larger bead broken, if that was broken after it had been strung, then you would have a little slack in the fringe here. You'd have a little thread showing, but there is no thread showing. So this means that somebody made it by hand themselves, and these beads were so precious that, and they couldn't get more of them, so they worked with what they had. And I don't think it hurts that suffers from it. It does suffer from this strand being broken, but the it looks like every single bead of this strand, these aren't all of them. I'll show you. I'll move this guy away so you can see. Um, there are more of these, and if I was to restring it, it would be the proper length. So I thought that was interesting. I also noticed that all these beads, and I'm willing to bet, I would actually bet you, if you're willing to bet, and I'm not much of a gambler, that the rest of these are glass. For these, however, let's see. It's kind of, in a way, in an odd way, it's kind of a good thing that this was broken because you can see the inside of it. If I knew more about jet, I might be able to be, I might have a better and more easily accessible opinion as to whether it's jet. But when a bead is broken, you can see the inside of it, and that sometimes reveals manufacturing methods and, kind of like forensic beading or something. Now, the bead that came off, these beads don't actually match up. You don't see it here, but you'll have to take my word for it. They show up to the naked eye as more kind of bronze, or even purplish bronze, compared to the the jet beads that they're, or excuse me, the jet glass beads that they're with. Um, Next, there are these little round beads that are, again, they're pretty irregular, but they look like they're manufactured glass. The seed beads, I would think, are glass. I it'd be very unusual to see jet beads that are this small because of the work involved in making them. But these are, for all I know, they could be just a different color of glass. But on the other hand, again, they have facets that do not appear to be from pressed glass. There aren't any telltale seams on the side that you'll see from the pressed glass. Their facets do not exactly match. So again, it's kind of debatable. I do see, if I find somebody who knows more about jet than I do, I will show it to them and ask them and hope that they can give me an answer on that, because it's a very good question as to whether, again, sadly, the nomenclature with beads is sketchy. It is then and now. The term jet was used both for the real Whitby jet and for um, jet glass, imitation jet, basically, black glass. So, and jet is kind of like, to put it really crudely, halfway between a piece of coal and a diamond. It's ancient earth material, let's say. Let's put it that way. But yeah, just to show you the backside of it, again, uh, it has that heavy duty cord that this is all sewn to as a backing. And so there's a lot of work that went into these guys. I have two more goodies for you. And I'm gonna have to look for this. I don't have it with me, so I will scan it and put a link to it in the description and the whatever, when I post the video, I'll make sure you get a copy of what I derived it from for the next piece. But this right here is what they used to call a sautoir necklace. And that glaring lamp in. passerby. Um, so Tor necklace, basically a big long lariat, we would call modern terminology is a lariat. Um, and those are very popular in the 1920s, so I'm guessing it's from the 1920s, but you know how that goes. Again, it's uh, doesn't mean it was necessarily made then because I don't have any provenance that says one thing or another. It just says museum, jet black, jet, and jet cap on the box, and that's all she wrote. So tassels, beaded beads. These are beads that were sewn onto a little cloth core that was, and the cloth was put over the uh, a wooden ball. Um, now let's see. Yeah, that sounds like glass, all right. Um, and these have a just really cool tiered tiered fringe, basically, with loops. And here we go. Sorry. What's interesting is some of these loops come off of here. This is cloth, not beads. So there were various ways of putting things together. Again, this part here and this part here is a cord, a nice sturdy cord, not beaded. So, and this it was either I'm not gonna wreck it to find out, but it's either crocheted or just uh, bead weaving of one sort or another. Um, super long, they nicknamed them flapper necklaces. Uh, and I will I will just I'm gonna measure it here. And it's delicate, 100 years old, starting to come apart. What can I say? But they made it heavy duty enough. It's over, let's see, we've got four strands times 12 is it's about 50 inches long. It's over 48 inches long. And it's just another example of gorgeous beaded gorgeousness from back in the day. And again, I believe I see on these, I do see a seam. So these beads are pressed glass. I think all the beads on here are pressed glass or seed beads that are manufactured. Now on this last piece, this goes back to the dawn of my beading. It reminds me of something I found. Somebody let me make a copy of an instructions sheet from about 1904 or 05 or 07, something like that, showing how to, what is it, doing, goodbye. I don't care about the phone anymore. Okay. But my little, something was in, I accidentally triggered some goofball thing on my computer here. So, okay, here it goes. I'm trying to handle this gingerly. This is called, if I'm right, I hope I'm right, hope I'm not steering you wrong, Resil net or Resil net, which is uh, netting with beads, but it's not all beads. It's netting with thread and beads. And this puppy is long. Let's see here. I'll measure it in a minute, but cut beads. They're irregular, but it doesn't matter because they've got thread in between them. So you can have a little wiggle room as you're using them. They attach to a, what do you call it? A binding, I guess you'd call it, up on top. And it's, of course, it's flexible. So when I measure it, it'll be an approximate measurement. So it's about 6 inches long. And let's see here. 1 foot. And it's about, well, it's 2 feet wide. So it makes me wonder, let's look at the ends here, whether they made it them, whether somebody made this by hand themselves or whether they were able to purchase it by the foot, just like you can with passementerie. So it'd be quite a lot of work. And the instructions that I will scan and attach to this video post, they mentioned that the work is tedious, but it can be done with some, if you stick with it, so they, even back then, they're going, yeah, it can be tedious to do this kind of thing. So let's see, straighten that out. But I can tell you right now that 2 feet, 2 feet by 6 inches of this type of work is going to take not hours, not days, but maybe a few weeks or a couple weeks or something. So I thank the person who made it because they obviously stuck with it for 2 whole feet in length of this. They finished it in such a way that although there are a couple spots where it came apart after over 100 years, the edges are secure. So in any case, this is still here, and I wonder how it would have been used. Seems like it would, it'd have to be on somebody's clothing. And whoever it was, they were either willing to invest a lot of time in it or willing to pay some good money for it, because even back then, this type of thing was not cheap. So, boy, well, that's the treasure trove, you guys. I hope you liked hearing about it. I hope you don't find my narrative too somnambulant, and I hope you like just kind of like, hope you don't mind my non-museum, non-gloved handling of the pieces. I can tell you right now that it's a miracle they survived this long. And again, I have no real indication of who owned it, where it came from, and what it was used for, and even what the materials are. But hey, that's kind of the fun thing about beads, is that they can last for centuries, and sometimes they leave behind evidence of what they're used for and what they're made out of, and sometimes they don't. So hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time when I find something really cool. Thanks, everybody. Bye.